What's up, you guys? It's Graham here. So it's no surprise the middle class is getting screwed. With incomes falling behind the cost of living, minimum wage dropping to its lowest purchasing power since 1956, and consumer debt ramping up alongside inflation, most Americans are taking up second jobs to make up the shortfall. And the cause of everything? That's right, it's millennials. Okay, but in all seriousness, even though my very own millennial generation is spending a lot of money, Congress wants to do something about it. And so they've created two brand new proposals: the Middle Class Savings and Investment Act and the Inflation Relief Act, which are both aimed at giving tax credits to those who quite literally stop spending their money. So let's talk about exactly what these new proposals would mean, how they would reward people for spending less money, and if this would be enough to bring down the rate of inflation. Although before we start, a different study actually found that one of the best ways to reduce inflation is by hitting the like button and subscribing if you haven't done that already. Okay, I may have just made that up, but if you appreciate the subtle humor, it would mean a lot to me if you subscribed, since that's totally free, and as a thank you for doing that, here's a picture of Will Ferrell. So thank you guys so much, and also big thank you to Ritual for sponsoring this video, but more on that later. Alright, so to bring you up to speed, here's what we're currently dealing with. Inflation is the highest it's been since 1981, prices have continued to rise at a rate of 8 to 9% year over year, and we still don't know when or how this will end as interest rates increase. Now, even though I joked about this all being millennials' faults, one investment strategist says, no, really, millennials have become the largest generation on record, and they've entered an age where they're beginning to spend a lot of money. At the core, the problem is simply too many people with too much money chasing too few goods. So as a way to counteract these increases, regardless of who's to blame, Congress has come up with two brand new proposals. The first is the Inflation Relief Act of 2022. Just like Californians would receive up to $1,050 for joint filers making up to $500,000 a year, this proposal would provide inflation relief to low and middle class Americans by indexing tax credits to inflation. And if that sounds confusing, here's all you need to know. 1. The child tax credit. This is the largest child tax credit ever in history, and if this proposal passes, it would index those amounts to inflation. So if inflation is 9% a year, then those amounts would also be increased by 9%. Now, the same thing would also apply for 2. The child and dependent care credit. And just like the previous example, if this were to pass, it would also be increased right alongside with inflation. 3. The American Opportunity Tax Credit. Now, this proposal would not only index those amounts to inflation, but it would also increase the income thresholds that would qualify. That way, people aren't punished for needing to make more money to pay for things that cost more because people make more money. Now, this would also extend throughout number 4, the Lifetime Learning Credit. And 5, we also have student loan interest deduction, and this is a big one. As of now, you're able to deduct the interest you pay on student loans for up to $2,500 a year, but this would allow you to increase that amount by the same rate of inflation. So imagine if everything stays the same, but inflation goes up by 9%, so do your tax deductions. However, this is just the very beginning, because the next proposal is aimed at getting more money back to middle-class Americans, and that would be the Middle Class Savings and Investment Act. This new bill has the sole purpose of getting you to spend less money, and if you could follow along, you will be handsomely rewarded. To start, it would change the tax rates of long-term capital gains. See, as of right now, when you hold your investment for longer than a year, your tax rate is substantially reduced. In fact, if you're married and you make less than $83,000 a year, your long-term capital gains tax rate is 0%, meaning you'll pay nothing in federal income taxes. Under this new proposal, however, that amount would be amended, with a 0% capital gains tax rate being applied to those making up to $165,000 a year filing jointly, or $82,000 a year if you're single. That means for a significant portion of the population, they would pay absolutely no federal income tax whatsoever on investment-related income in the stock market or real estate up to those amounts. Second, the bill would also allow for the first $300 to $600 that you make in interest income to be completely tax-free. This would also be applied to dividend income. So if you buy a stock and that stock pays you $300 a year for holding it, well, congratulations, you'll owe no money on that income whatsoever. Now, 3, for my wealthier viewers out there, this also modifies the net investment tax, which as of right now applies a 3.8% surtax to investment income if you make more than $200,000 to $250,000 a year. This new bill, though, would remove the marriage penalty by increasing the $250,000 limit to $400,000, so that way it's exactly twice the amount that a single filer would receive. And finally, 4th, we have the enhancement of the Savers Credit. As it stands right now, the Savers Credit gives low and middle income Americans up to $1,000 who contribute to a retirement account. And with this new proposal, that amount would be increased to $2,500 with the income limitations expanded so that more people can qualify. Now, of course, money doesn't just grow on trees. It's printed. So as a way to help pay for these tax cuts, it's proposed to extend the SALT cap deduction another 3 years through 2028. See, prior to 2018, state and local taxes were fully deductible on a federal level, meaning if you work in any state that charges some level of income or property tax, that amount could be fully deducted from your overall income, and as a result, you'd pay less in tax. But that came to an end with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. However, that act was never meant to be permanent, and as it stands right now, it's automatically set to expire by the end of 2025. This new proposal, however, would extend that $10,000 cap in an effort to give more tax credits back to those who make under $400,000 a year, with the hope that this would incentivize people to spend less and save more, especially during a time where we are shifting into a recession. Although before we go into that, I've always talked about financial investments, but I rarely ever talk about health-related investments, and the older I've got, the more importance I've been putting on staying active, eating well, and getting a good night of sleep, of which our sponsor Ritual wants to help. They offer a wide range of daily multivitamins designed around transparent, traceable ingredients to help support foundational health. In addition to that, they've also just launched their newest product, Symbiotic Plus, a daily 3-in-1 prebiotic, probiotic, and postbiotic supplement designed to help support gut, digestive, and immune functionality. Just one daily capsule, essenced in mint, is all it takes, and its delayed release allows for it to reach the ideal environment for probiotics to survive and grow. Plus, no refrigerator is needed for the bottle's moisture-controlled technology. And just like all of Ritual's products, Symbiotic Plus boasts a clean formula that's vegan-friendly and formulated without GMOs, major allergens, animal products, or artificial colors. They also offer a monthly subscription delivered right to your door with free shipping for anyone forgetful like me, and that way you'll never have to worry about running out. So if you're interested in signing up and learning more, feel free to use the link down below in the description to sign up today and get 20% off your first month. Again, all you gotta do is go to ritual.com/Graham and use the code Graham at checkout. It's that easy. And now with that said, let's get back to the video. Alright, now in terms of a shrinking economy and what this means for your money, as of the other day, a new report just confirmed a second quarter decline of GDP, which technically means we've entered a recession. This generally encompasses an environment where less money is spent, our economy contracts, and news outlets can get more clicks from a spooky headline. But since GDP isn't always a true reflection of the overall economy, the National Bureau of Economic Research updated their definition to include a significant decline in economic activity that could last for a few months to more than a year, and that's usually accompanied by lower employment, production, and sales is tracked on a monthly basis rather than quarterly. The White House even prepped us in advance of this new definition with the understanding that there are no fixed rules or thresholds that trigger a determination of decline. Or in other words, they're basically saying that we're not in a recession until we tell you we're in a recession. And it's probably going to be once the worst is already over, because they take a while. As the Boston Globe points out, throughout the last 6 recessions that have been confirmed, there is an average lag time of 7.3 months between the time a recession takes place and the time it is actually confirmed. Why does it take so long, you might ask? Well, in the 44 years that they've been operating, they've never once had to rescind or change their declaration, which means they've been extremely accurate. But as a result, the process takes a long time to complete, which means by the time we know about it, it's already too late. Now, in terms of how this might impact our market, here's where things get interesting. From 1869 to 2018, there have been a total of 16 recessions which had positive stock market returns. In fact, of those positive recessions, the stock market went up an average of 9.8% during a time the GDP declined by 3%. To take that a step further, since 1869, one study found that the correlation between GDP growth and stock market returns was nearly 0. And on average, the US stock market tends to peak about 6 months prior to the start of a recession, and that's where we get into the bad news. According to a Wealth of Common Sense blog, throughout every recession that we have seen since 1945, the stock market has at some point seen a sell-off, with the average drawdown coming in at a whopping 29.2%, of which we've already somewhat seen depending on the industry. Although the good news is that even though there can be a rather abrupt sell-off, by the time a recession is over and actually recovers, it tends to post an average profit of 1.7% with an average gain of 15.3% in the following 1 year. That just means investing during a recession is one of the most profitable times that you could invest. Not to mention, in the 3 years following every single recession that we have ever had, the market was 100% in the green. All of that is to say that based on the data, you shouldn't wait for an official confirmation of a recession to decide it's a good time to invest. Since the market is forward-thinking, meaning by the time we actually confirm a recession, the opportunity is going to be long, long gone. So overall, in terms of my own thoughts about the new proposed tax credits, I have to say it does make sense to index the income thresholds and contributions to inflation. After all, a $5,000 contribution to a Roth IRA in 2008 would be the equivalent of investing almost $6,900 today. But here we are with a $6,000 limit that is yet to be adjusted while everything else goes up in price. This is one of the reasons why we have a lower long-term capital gains tax rate to begin with. That's because when you invest your money, not only are you putting your capital at risk, but you're also losing purchasing power to inflation, and that inflation adds up. Just consider that had you invested $100,000 in 1922 that only increased with inflation, you would have almost $1.7 million in today's money, of which, if you sold, you would be subject to a 20% tax rate, which would leave you with less purchasing power today than you had back in 1922. That's why the government wants to incentivize people to invest long-term with money that gets redeployed back into businesses with greater economic opportunities with, of course, a lower tax rate. Now, practically though, I'm not quite sure how these proposals would help reduce inflation. The way I see it, this is only going to help the people who have the disposable income to invest. And for everybody else, yes, the tax credits would help, but would that help bring down food and energy prices? Probably not. That's why I think this is a reasonable proposal that's going to help a lot of people, but not for the purpose of bringing down inflation. Unfortunately, that's probably going to need a lot more sustained effort long term, and I wouldn't be surprised if tax rates are negotiated at a later time when they're set to expire at the end of 2025. But at least in the meantime, you could do your best to save as much money as possible, dollar cost average into the markets on a regular basis, and always, no matter what, also feel free to add me on Instagram. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time.